Hello, Honors Algebra students. Mr. Lawrence here in a real quick video, just a little front loading. If you don't see it, it's okay, but of course if you're seeing it, you know you're going to know what's up. Remember in class on Tuesday, I mentioned quickly that the square root of x squared is the absolute value of x, right? Because we'd have x times x. The general rule is if the exponent was even and becomes odd, then you need an absolute value. And that's because we're limiting ourselves to the real numbers. And so we can't get a negative answer out here, okay? We've got to have a positive x, and we're going to have a positive x here. Now in this one, we're going to break this down to an x squared times x. We won't need the absolute value because if x were negative, we wouldn't get a real number here. Right? We wouldn't be able to take the positive square root of -8, for example. It's not a real number. You'll do non-real roots maybe next year, definitely in Algebra 2. All right, so the general rule is if you have an even exponent under the rad and an odd exponent outside the rad, it will become, you'll need the absolute value. It will be necessary. Okay. Well, here, this is going to be what? X squared times x squared. But if x were negative, in either case, it's going to turn positive, so you don't need to worry about it. Okay, so that's really what's going on. We don't want a negative answer here. We don't want x to be a negative. I'm writing that the wrong way, sorry. X is not less than 0. Okay, that's a less than with a line through it. So we need the absolute value to guarantee that. Okay, on this one, x couldn't be negative because if it were, then we get a non-real root. And in this one, if x is negative, it doesn't matter because when we take it to the 4th power, we'll get a real root. If we square it, we're going to get a positive number. Everything's okay. All right, how about to the 5th? Well, that would be like x squared times x x. And so the x squareds would leave the house on the date and be left with an x inside. And there you go. Now, when you have a more complicated one like this, it's real simple. We're going to break this down into 16 times 4. Oh, no, 16 times 3, excuse me. Okay. This is going to break down to x squared times x squared. This will break down to y squared times y squared times y. And then the z to the 6 will break down to z cubed times z cubed. Okay, so we're going to end up with a situation like this. We're going to have a 4 outside and a 3 inside. We're going to have an x squared outside, right? No x is left inside. We're going to have a y squared outside and a y inside. And then we're going to have a z cubed outside, but the z cubed will need to be an absolute value. Okay, the general rule is that if you have an even exponent under the rad and outside the rad you have an odd exponent, then you need the absolute values. And it's all about making sure we get a positive. That's all it's about. All right, we'll get some practice with this in class over the next couple days. Mr. Lawrence signing off. Have a good night, everybody.